The forest was silent, save for the soft rustle of wind moving through the leaves like a lullaby. Each step along the mossy path felt softer than the last, as if the earth itself wished to soothe weary feet. The deeper one traveled into this sleeping woodland, the more the world around seemed to exhale, releasing tension, releasing time. And then, just past a bend shaped like a crescent moon, it appeared. An archway made of twisted roots and ivy, crowned with tiny lanterns glowing faintly blue, stood guard to something long forgotten. Beyond it, shrouded in the gentle mist of early dusk, rose the sloping roofs of an ancient building, stone walls worn smooth by centuries of rain, its windows like sleepy eyes set into the facade. Above the main entrance, an iron bell hung from a crooked wooden beam. Its surface was etched with soft, curling script that no longer made sense, but still felt right. It was the kind of bell that didn't ring for danger or alarm. It rang only for arrival, and only if you were meant to be there. When the wind shifted, it moved. The bell chimed, not with urgency, but like a soft breath, a note that hummed low and long, vibrating gently through the trees, through the bones, through the heart. Dong, dong. You stepped forward, drawn like a leaf toward a still pool. The path ahead was lined with blue mushrooms glowing softly, their light flickering like tiny sighs. A squirrel, silver-furred and slow-moving, watched from a branch above, then blinked once, twice, and faded into the bark like smoke into night. Before you stood a wooden door, arched and old, its grain full of knots that looked suspiciously like eyes. It was carved with patterns of stars and moons, spirals and feathers, and a single handprint, not large, not small, just waiting. You placed your hand gently upon it. The door opened inward, without a sound. Inside, the air was warm and smelled faintly of lavender, parchment, and old tea. The light came not from candles, nor from chandeliers, but from floating orbs that drifted lazily near the high ceiling, golden, soft, as if dreaming their own dreams. You stepped into a circular foyer, your footsteps muffled by thick carpets woven with constellations. To your left, a narrow hallway bent out of sight. To your right, a spiral staircase coiled upward like a vine. But straight ahead was what drew you. A vast wooden board suspended in air, its surface etched with thousands of glowing names that faded in and out like fireflies. You searched for yours, and there it was, flickering into view in sleepy script, the letters soft at the edges. Welcome, dreamer. A hush settled into your body, like sleep pressing gently behind your eyes. Just then, a sound, or was it a voice, floated toward you from deeper within. New arrival, room 117, first floor east. A door nearby creaked softly open of its own accord, revealing a stone hallway lined with bookshelves that reached the ceiling. A cat, long, pale, and slow-moving, padded silently from within and looked up at you with sleepy green eyes. It blinked, then turned and walked down the hall. You followed. The corridor smelled like cedar and old stories. Each step was accompanied by the soft hum of distant pages turning themselves, as though invisible students were reading quietly just beyond sight. Room 117 was a small chamber, perfectly round, with a bed that looked like it had grown from the floor. A canopy of vines hung lazily above it, swaying even though there was no wind. Upon the bed sat a small parcel wrapped in soft cloth and tied with string. A note sat on top. For your first night, wear it well. Rest is the first spell. Inside was a robe, warm, thick, and stitched with silvery thread that shimmered like snowfall. You slipped it on and immediately felt the weight of the day loosen from your shoulders. The cat had curled itself near the fire, already asleep. You lay down. The ceiling above flickered gently with the illusion of a night sky. Stars swirling slowly, clouds forming and dissolving like breath. Then came a voice, neither male nor female, neither old nor young, not from outside you, but from within. Welcome to Somnara, the school of sleep magic, where spells are soft, time slows like syrup, and rest is not weakness, but wisdom. Here, you will not be tested with noise or challenge. Only asked one question, whispered in many ways. Can you let go? The first night passed like a sigh. When you awoke, or half awoke, a gentle bell sounded once more in the distance. Not urgent, not commanding, just inviting. You followed it. Down quiet stone corridors, lit by orbs of starlight. Past windows where the morning mist still clung like feathers. Past paintings that shifted when you weren't looking, but never when you stared. Eventually, you came to a door slightly ajar. Light spilled from within, golden and soft, flickering like a candle in deep slumber. Inside sat a classroom unlike any you had known. There were no desks, no blackboards, just soft cushions, blankets, and books that floated through the air, humming softly to themselves. Hanging plants released calming aromas every so often: chamomile, mint, bergamot. At the center of the room stood a tall figure wrapped in a robe of soft green, embroidered with ivy and moths. Their face was half-shadowed, half-lit like the moon on a misty night. They turned to you and smiled. "Ah," they said, in a voice like a river in spring. "You made it to your first lesson." The class gathered slowly, not all at once, but like dreams drifting into place. Students arrived on tiptoe, speaking not with words, but with glances, yawns, the occasional hum. When everyone was finally settled, the teacher raised a hand and spoke. "Tonight," they said, "we begin not with potions nor chants, but with something older, the very first spell ever cast." A pause. Rest. The room sighed in agreement. The teacher walked slowly among the cushions, trailing fingers through the air as if stirring unseen water. "Long ago," they continued, "before battles and books, before the loudness of the world, magic began in silence. Their robe whispered as they moved, as though sewn with sleep itself. Real magic is not thunder. It is not fire. It is the moment a child falls asleep to the rhythm of rain. It is the peace just before the snow begins to fall. It is the breath taken between dreams." They stopped beside you. "Here," they said, offering a leaf-shaped cup of something warm. "We drink not to awaken, but to sink." You sipped. It tasted of soft pears and forgotten lullabies. "And when the world is loud," the teacher continued, "we do not shout louder." They raised a hand, and the room dimmed gently, not dark, but dusk. "We whisper." The bell chimed once more, softer now, inside your chest rather than your ears. This, you thought, as you lay back into the cushions, is learning, I understand. The first class at the School of Sleep Magic ended, not with applause, but with breathing, not with homework, but with dreams. Each student drifted quietly into sleep, right there where they sat. And as the stars outside began to shimmer into view, so too did the stars on the ceiling of the classroom. A hush fell over everything, even time, even thought, even you. And in the final flicker of waking, you heard one last whisper before the dream fully claimed you. "Here," it said, "you do not need to be awake to become wise." The morning passed like the shadow of a cloud. You woke not suddenly, but slowly, the way fog lifts from the surface of a lake. Around you, The air was cool and lavender-scented. Your robe had softened in the night, fitting more like second skin than cloth. Somewhere nearby, a bird that sang only in dreams gave a single low trill and vanished. No one came to fetch you. No bell rang to call you forth. But still, you rose. You wandered through the wide corridors of Somnara, where the stones did not echo, and the light was always gentle, no matter the hour. Along the walls were portraits that blinked softly, but never moved when watched. From one door, you heard faint harp music. From another, the murmur of ancient languages spoken too softly to understand. Eventually, you found the alchemy chamber, or rather, it found you. There was no sign, no number, just a door shaped like a teardrop, carved from pale wood, with steam curling out from beneath its threshold, scented of anise, elderflower, and sleep. You pushed gently, and it opened without protest. Inside, the room was dim and warm, lit by pale lanterns that hovered near the ceiling like drowsy fireflies. The walls were shelves, not filled with books, but with bottles. Hundreds of bottles, perhaps thousands, each a different shape. Some tall and thin, like icicles, others squat and round, like apples. Some shimmered with liquid. Some seemed to hold fog. One glowed faintly like starlight trapped in glass. In the center of the room stood a long marble table, smooth as water. At the head of it stood Master Solus. He wore robes the color of sleep, dark gray, soft violet, and a blue so deep it seemed almost black. His hair was silver, though not from age. His eyes were pale, pale green, nearly white, as if he had seen too many dreams to remember which were real. He did not smile exactly, but his face held peace. "Ah," he said softly, as if he had just been waiting for your breath to reach him. "You have come for your first draft." His voice was not deep nor high. It was still, like wind moving across stone. You nodded. He gestured for you to sit at the table. The seat was warm, like it had just been occupied by someone who left only moments ago. Or perhaps by the dream of someone. Master Solus began to speak. "Before there were spells," he said, unrolling a parchment map of the stars across the marble, "there were drafts, liquids that moved through the body like slow songs, not to heal wounds or grant power, but to remind the body of what it already knew. He tapped the parchment, and tiny lights shimmered on it, constellations that pulsed with memory. The first sleep draft was not made in a laboratory. It was brewed in a forest clearing under a sky full of snow. A traveler, lost and tired, had nothing but a pot, a stream, and a pouch of dried herbs. They boiled them together, drank the mixture, and slept the deepest sleep of their life. He looked at you then, and when they woke, they remembered their name. From the shelves, Master Solus selected 5 bottles. Each he set down with a gentle thunk, naming them as he did. Chamomile, ash root, feathered thyme, starlit honey, and he paused. Moss glass, harvested only from the northern side of trees touched by moonlight. You watched as he uncorked the first. Chamomile, a soft golden liquid, shimmered like melted sunlight. He poured exactly 3 drops into a glass bowl shaped like a lily pad. A sleep draft, he said, is not about quantity. It is about balance. The wrong proportions do not make you ill. They make you restless. From the second bottle, ash root, came a thick, silvery syrup. It poured slowly, as if resisting gravity. This, Solus murmured, grounds the heart. Then came feathered thyme, a dry herb that crumbled with a sigh. He sprinkled it between his palms and released it over the bowl like falling snow. Memory of warmth. Starlit honey was next, and when it touched the surface of the liquid, it hummed faintly, the note resonating low and long, felt more than heard. Finally, the moss glass. It looked like pale water, but with flecks of blue drifting lazily through it, like flakes of ice. 1 drop, just 1, and the mixture dimmed in color, settling into a muted lavender. Solus stirred it once, counterclockwise. The room dimmed slightly. Now, he said, you will sip. He slid the bowl toward you. Its rim was cool, but not cold. You leaned in, inhaled. It smelled familiar, but not from waking life. You sipped. The flavor shifted as it touched your tongue. First, warmth, like tea sipped beside a window during rain. Then coolness, like silk across the skin. Then a note you could not name, but which reminded you of being carried as a child. Master Solus watched, not judging, simply witnessing. You finished. The room sighed, not literally, but in the way it tilted slightly, becoming softer. The shelves looked farther away. The lights looked closer. The table beneath your hands felt like memory instead of stone. You looked at Solace. His voice, when it came, was quieter than before. "You will feel 3 things," he said. "First, weightlessness. Indeed, your shoulders felt light, your neck unburdened, your breath deep and full. Second, slowness. Time thickened, not unpleasantly, just calmly. Thoughts came one by one, not in clusters. You could choose which to follow or let go. And third," he whispered, "a door." Your mind began to imagine a door. You did not try. It appeared on its own. A pale, wooden thing, simple, with no handle. Just a soft glow beneath it, and the sound of waves. "You may choose to open it," Solace said, "or not. It will not vanish. It is your door now." You nodded slowly. The room began to dim further, and your head gently tilted downward, though you had not chosen to rest it. "Every student at Somnara must make their own draft," Solace continued. "It is the final task before graduation. But first, you must dream." He raised one hand, palm outward. A gentle warmth brushed across your forehead, and you drifted, not into sleep exactly, but into something under sleep, a layer beneath. You found yourself floating, not flying, through a field of clouds that moved like breath. Below, the ground shimmered with rivers that hummed lullabies. Above, stars blinked slowly, like eyes half closing. You heard voices, not alarming, not calling, but reciting, like poets speaking to themselves. One said, "I once brewed a draft that made time stop, but I drank it before the lesson ended." Another said, "The best potion for sleep is one you do not finish, just enough to begin." You smiled, though your body no longer felt like it was smiling. It just was. Somewhere, the cat from your room drifted by on a cloud, tail swaying like a banner. And then, a bell, very far away. You began to return. When your eyes opened again, Master Solace was seated beside you, reading a book that did not seem to have pages, just wisps of smoke shaped like words. He did not look up, but said, "Well done." You nodded, slower than usual. "Your next task," he said, "is not to brew. It is to observe. Notice what in this school makes you tired in the best way. A certain corridor, a window, a song. These are ingredients too." He closed his book, and the smoke dissolved. "You may go," he said. "And when the time is right, I will call you for your second lesson." You stood, steadier than expected. Before leaving, you glanced back at the draft still faintly glowing in the glass bowl. Solace followed your gaze and smiled gently. "There is always more," he said, "but never too much." You left the chamber quietly, and as the door closed behind you, the bottle shelves hummed once more, not in speech, but in lullaby. The rain began without warning, not with thunder, not with wind, just the sound of soft tapping, like fingers on glass, gentle, patient, steady. You had been walking the east corridor of Somnara, where the windows were tall and the drapes heavier than shadows. Outside, the sky was gray in that comforting way, like an old wool blanket. The forest beyond looked blurry, not from distance, but from dreams rising like mist through the trees. Each raindrop that hit the windows sent a tiny pulse through the glass, as if the school itself was listening. And perhaps it was. A bell sounded, but not from within. This time, it rang from the rain. Ding, ding, but not metal, not alarm. It was the chime of water meeting stone in the perfect rhythm. You followed the sound. Down a spiral staircase lined with ivy that never wilted, through an arch where silver spiders had woven a web of unread poems, past a hallway where the paintings had all turned to face the wall. They preferred to listen to the rain, too. At the end of the passage, a door had been left open. Inside was a chamber you had not seen before. It was made entirely of glass. The walls, the ceiling, the floor, all transparent, save for the soft rugs and cushions scattered like fallen stars across the space. The room was shaped like a raindrop, curved and narrow at the far end. Outside, the rain danced down the glass in slow trails, like sleepy tears. In the center stood a figure with a staff of driftwood and silver bells. Their robe was woven from something too fine to be cloth. It shimmered like wet leaves and rippled gently, even though there was no breeze. They did not turn when you entered, but they spoke. Sit wherever the rain draws you. You did not hesitate. A soft cushion near a corner called to you, pale blue, ringed with stitched moons. As you sat, you felt a calm wrap around you, like a shawl freshly warmed. The teacher turned. They were old, not with wrinkles, but with presence. Their eyes were like storms paused mid-thought. Their hands moved with the slowness of someone who had no reason to rush. And their voice sounded like water through moss. "This," they said, "is the class of drifting spells." You blinked slowly. The teacher smiled. These are spells not cast with intention, but released, like wishes tied to leaves, or words whispered into fog. They raised their staff. The bells gave a soft chime, no louder than a sigh. And outside, the rain began to shift. The drops no longer ran straight down the glass. Instead, they curved, forming gentle patterns, spirals, loops, the symbols you had seen on the doors of the school, now written in water. These are spells, the teacher said. Rain remembers them. They took a deep breath and exhaled slowly, deliberately. As they did, the drops on the ceiling began to fall in time with that breath. Inhale, they said softly. You did. Exhale. The room responded. Each breath seemed to align with the rhythm of the rain, as if your lungs were in conversation with the sky. Magic, they whispered, is not always fire. Often, it is condensation. The class laughed, not loudly, just a ripple of agreement. You looked around. Others had joined. You had not seen them enter. A girl with feathers in her hair. A boy whose fingers glowed faintly as he traced patterns on the glass. A shadow, possibly a person, possibly a memory, curled in one corner, like smoke in a jar. The teacher gestured to a pool at the center of the room. It had not been there before. A shallow basin of crystal clear water. Above it, raindrops hovered, suspended in the air, never falling, caught mid-descent, like a spell held in breath. This, said the teacher, is where we catch drifting spells. They knelt and passed a hand gently through the air. The droplets began to spin slowly, like a mobile above a cradle. Sometimes, they said, these spells take shape. Sometimes, they whisper. You leaned in. The drops began to shimmer, not reflect, but glow from within. And inside each, an image appeared. One showed a door opening to a room filled with candlelight and snow. Another showed a hand, wrinkled and kind, placing a warm cloth on a forehead. Another, a bird flying backwards, wings open like a sigh. These, said the teacher, are memories looking for homes. You tilted your head. But how do we learn them? Someone asked. The teacher smiled. You do not learn them, they replied. You dream them. They handed each of you a small stone, smooth and cool, shaped like a droplet. Etched on its surface was a rune, no two stones alike. You held yours in your palm. At first, nothing. Then, warmth. Then a sound inside your mind, not your ears. A lullaby, familiar, but from a place you had never been. The teacher spoke again. These stones are attuned to the rain. Sleep with them beside you. When you wake, write what you dreamed. That is how we gather the drifting spells. They looked out toward the storm beyond the glass. Not all spells need be understood. Some are simply reminders. They turned their face skyward. When the world is too sharp, too loud, too fast, let it rain. The room grew quieter still. The rain thickened, not in volume, but in meaning. Each drop now felt like a heartbeat, a breath, a step on moss. And somewhere, beneath all sound, you began to hear words. They came not through your ears, but through your skin. Pause. Sink. Stay. You do not have to be useful now, only real. You did not remember when the class ended, only that at some point, your cushion became a cloud. Your stone pulsed like a piece of purring in your hand. The glass walls blurred not from rain, but from your eyes. And the rain sang to you. Not a song, but a spell. Not to act, not to awaken, but simply to rest. When you awoke, gently, without a jolt, you were no longer in the glass chamber. You were back in your room, the stone still in your hand. On your windowsill, a single raindrop sat perfectly still, glowing faintly with the same rune etched on your stone. Outside, the forest whispered in sleep. And somewhere within Somnara, a bell chimed once, then faded. You did not rise. You did not need to, because the spell had followed you home, and the rain would remember. Somewhere between waking and dreaming, the hallway stretched longer than it had been the night before. You wandered softly, slippers brushing against the hush-thick carpet of stars. You had not meant to leave your room. You had not even opened the door. But here you were, walking, and the school, as it often did, had rearranged itself. Each turn of the corridor felt like a breath between thoughts. Every candle flickered not with flame, but with memory. Pale blue light shimmered across the walls, and you noticed that the paintings here were different. Not portraits, but landscapes, and each was in motion. A field under moonlight, where the wind bent the grass. A staircase of clouds that disappeared into sky. A room full of chairs where no one ever sat, but dust still moved as if someone had just stood up. You stopped before one final archway. Above it was a carving, a sleeping owl, wings folded like pages. Beneath it, a phrase, "All that is forgotten sleeps here, waiting." You stepped inside. The library of memory did not begin with shelves. It began with silence, not empty, not dead. A breathing silence, soft and heavy, the kind that wraps around you like a grandmother's shawl. The room opened wide, impossibly wide. You could not see the ceiling. You could not see the far wall. But it did not feel overwhelming. It felt safe, as if the space existed not to be filled, but to be held. Books lined the walls, some so high you could not imagine reaching them, others so low they disappeared into mist. The shelves bent like branches, curling in and out of alcoves where cushions and lamps nestled together like old friends. Each book was bound not in leather or cloth, but in memories. Velvet, silk, stone, starlight, tree bark, petals. You ran your fingers across a spine that shimmered like frost. It whispered, "Third dream, fourth winter, east wing." Another purred gently as you touched it, what the child forgot after the song. A third, the laugh you lost in spring. And then, from somewhere deeper within the library, a bell, but not a school bell. A smaller chime, like glass touched by wind. You followed. The path was not straight, nor curved. It was simply gentle, as if the shelves moved aside just enough for you to pass. You arrived at a round chamber where the shelves formed a circle, and at the center, a table shaped like a clock, though there were no hands. Just 12 small books, each pulsing faintly, arranged like hours. Behind the table sat a figure cloaked in mist. They were neither old nor young, neither tall nor small. Their face shimmered gently, always almost in focus, never quite. But their eyes, those were clear, soft brown, like wood warmed by sun. "You have arrived," they said, and their voice was like a page turning. You nodded. "Do you remember what brought you here?" they asked. You shook your head. "That is all right," they said kindly. "Most do not." They stood slowly and gestured to the 12 books. "These," they said, "are your unopened chapters." You leaned forward. Each book bore a small symbol, a feather, a spoon, a broken chain, a handprint, a moth, a door, and more you could not name. "These are not lessons," the figure explained. "They are echoes." They selected the book with the feather, opened it. The pages were not blank, but they were not inked either. They shimmered like fog catching sunlight. The figure placed a hand over it and closed their eyes. And then it began. A voice. Not theirs, not yours, but familiar. Reading, reciting, remembering. The day you first fell asleep outside. The grass curled up beneath your knees, and a bee hovered above your cheek like a blessing. You listened. You did not dream of castles or dragons. You dreamed of nothing, and woke happier than ever. The page turned itself. Later, you would forget that moment, until now. The figure closed the book and placed it beside you. "It is yours again," they said. They reached for another, the one with the moth. When the lamp flickered on your 7th night here, you thought it was broken, but it was not. It blinked in rhythm with your breath, trying to soothe you. You closed your eyes. Yes, you remembered. Sort of. The figure continued. "Not all memories must be strong. Some just need to be soft." They opened the book with the handprint. "Your mother once held your hand while you were asleep, not to protect, but to feel close. She never told you, but her thumb drew circles on your palm all night. A silence settled around you, a kind of ache, but gentle, the kind that lets you exhale." The figure smiled softly. "This is the magic of the library," they said, "to remind you that even in forgetfulness, nothing is truly lost." They pointed to the remaining books. "Each will come back to you, in time, in dreams, in rest." You touched the one with the door. You once opened a door without knowing why. There was no danger, no treasure, no quest, just wind, and it made you laugh. You looked at the figure. What happens if I open them all? They tilted their head. Then you will sleep more deeply than ever before. They handed you the feather book. It begins with 1. You cradled it in your lap. The cover was warm, familiar, comforting. Around the chamber, candles that had not existed before began to flicker softly. A warm breeze moved through the room, though there were no windows. The books hummed, not in melody, but in breath. The figure stepped back. "Stay as long as you like," they said. "There is no rush in remembering." And then they faded, not dramatically but gently, like fog rising to meet stars. You stayed. You opened the book again, not to read, but to feel. You did not need to understand every word. The library understood for you. The walls glowed softly. The rugs warmed beneath you. And somewhere, a moth brushed your shoulder like a silent kiss. The books whispered one last thing. You have always known how to rest. You only needed permission. And as your eyes grew heavy, as the book began to close itself, you exhaled into the quiet, and it welcomed you. It came on the 7th night, or perhaps the 7th dream. Time at Samnara no longer followed a clock. It followed breath. It was on this breath at the edge of evening that you received the note. Slipped under your door, written on paper so thin it felt like air. No name signed, just 5 soft words in the center. Tonight, the final lesson. No location was given, but the school guided you as it always did. The candles flickered in directions you needed to follow. The doors opened just as you arrived. The hall seemed to lean ever so slightly, like trees bowing to wind. The path ended before a room you had never seen, though you were certain it had always been there. Its door was simple, pale wood, shaped like a crescent moon turned on its side. No carvings, no bell, just stillness. You touched the handle. It turned silently. Inside, a circular chamber with no ceiling. Above, the stars blinked in slow rhythm. The floor was smooth and dark, scattered with soft cushions arranged in a spiral inward. And in the very center, a figure waited, cloaked in layers of blue and silver, face turned upward, watching the sky. They did not speak as you entered. They simply gestured to a cushion near the edge. You sat. Others entered. Some you recognized. The girl with feathers in her hair, the cat now wearing a scarf, a tall boy who once spoke to mirrors. They sat too, slowly, reverently. The stars brightened above. And then the figure spoke. Their voice was not loud, but it filled the room as completely as breath fills lungs. "You have learned," they said, "to brew stillness, to listen to rain, to read memories bound in velvet. And now, you will learn the last spell. A pause, soft as snowfall, the spell of sleep." The wind stirred above, not wind exactly, just the sky moving gently. The spell is not spoken, not written, not cast. They turned slowly, revealing a face both ancient and young. "It is allowed." They walked the spiral path inward as they spoke. "To sleep," they said, "is not to surrender to weakness. It is to return to wisdom. Your body knows what your mind forgets." They paused beside you. "To rest is to remember that you do not have to earn peace. You are peace when still." The spiral pulled inward. Each step they took seemed to pull thought from your limbs, like threads unraveling from a day too long worn. "You were told once," they continued, "that sleep is unproductive." They stopped. "Tonight, you unlearn that lie." From beneath their robe, they withdrew a small object, a key made of glass, strung on a ribbon the color of dusk. They held it up. "This key does not open a door," they said. "It closes one." They turned to the center of the chamber. There, where the spiral ended, lay a bed. Not just any bed. It had no legs, no headboard. It hovered gently above the floor, like a leaf on a still pond. Its blankets were mist. Its pillow, a breeze. The figure walked to it and laid the key gently in the air beside it, where it hovered, like everything else. And then, they looked at all of you. "One at a time," they said, "when you are ready." Then they sat beside the bed, silent. You did not move, not out of fear, out of knowing. This was not a test to pass. This was a lesson to remember. You watched as the first student rose, the mirror talker, and walked inward. He lay down. The figure touched his forehead, and he slept. So deeply, so peacefully, that the air itself seemed to hum with his breath. One by one, the others followed. No words, no applause, no dreams of grandeur, just the choice to let go. And then, it was your turn. You stood, softly. The spiral welcomed you. Each cushion you passed gave a whisper, not words, just warmth. You reached the center. The key hovered, waiting. You lay down. The blanket of mist curled over your shoulders like a familiar story. The breeze pillow cradled your thoughts until they no longer held shape. The figure leaned in close. Their hand, cool and soft, touched your brow. And then, they whispered not into your ear, but into your whole being. "You have done enough. You are enough. Sleep now." And you did. The stars blinked slower. The air held its breath. The spiral closed behind you like a dream folding inward. And far, far away, perhaps in another world entirely, a bell chimed. Just once. Just for you. You do not remember waking. Only that, later, you found yourself back in your room. The key still hung around your neck, and the stars above your bed traced the spiral you had walked. You breathed in, and felt no edge, no burden, no need, just presence. The school would remain. The teachers would continue their quiet work. The library would keep its stories. The drafts would be ready when called upon. But for now, for tonight, for this moment, you needed only to rest. Because the lesson was not about magic. It was about remembering what you had always known. That stillness is power. That peace is protection. That dreams are teachers. And that sleep is sacred.